It's a pretty tried and true list this time of year. You've got spring football, you've got recruiting, and you've got the transfer portal. Here we go for Buckeyes Live for the next 60 right here at the Voice of College Football. To one side, Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports. To the other side, yes, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Huddle, and the Big Me podcast. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great.
Doing well.
Steve is looking forward to quieter times for the next few months.
Yeah, it's like a 60-hour week from mid-July to mid-April till the spring game ends. And then this 3-month period until mid-July is usually not quite as hectic. No practices and interview sessions to go to for either the main Ohio State teams. So until the Big Ten Media Days hit in mid-July. I mean, there'll be some recruiting camps in June and different things like that. But ordinarily, this is the quietest time of the year. And, I think we just want to kind of gear down a little bit, but keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on, as you said, with transfer portal and gearing up for the season ahead.
It was like a mini spring game, big noon, I should say. Of course, with Fox there, Steve. So what's your initial take on the spring game?
Start with the broadcast. I think a lot of people were a little bit put out that they really didn't cover the game quite as much as they made it more of people said a talk show, which I think you have to do a blend of that. There were only about 600,000 viewers for the game, so I don't think the experiment hit maybe quite as well as they'd hoped it would have. Even Buckeye Nation didn't tune in to watch it, it seems. So I don't know if 600 is probably better than whatever infomercial they were going to put on, I suppose. But, to me, the game itself was a great showcase for a lot of young players, freshmen and sophomores, to get an opportunity at Ohio Stadium to try and make some plays. We didn't see the frontline guys more than for 2 or 3 series early in the scrimmage. It was just kind of a cameo. I thought Emeka Egbuka kind of showed out a little bit to have 4 catches. It was kind of a wash between Will Howard and Devin Brown. They each had 2 possessions, and they both put up about the same number of yards, although one of Brown's possessions ended with a touchdown. Should be noted, he threw it to a walk-on and was playing against mostly freshmen and walk-ons when he did score that touchdown. But still, some people came out of it saying Brown outplayed Howard, and some people thought Howard still has just the tiniest leg up on Brown. But on the whole, I thought just a great day. It didn't appear that anybody got too banged up as a result of it, which is obviously an important thing to have full health. I think the one big concern health-wise is Brandon Ennis, the wide receiver, and they're going to need him. I think the young receivers struggled getting separation against veteran defensive backs in this game, and the Ohio State offensive line still not where it needs to be. They gave up 6 sacks and 70 called pass plays. That's not a good ratio going into the season, obviously.
Your take, Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of Steve's points. So, I'll try not to repeat them, but I'll get on a downhill roll and probably will repeat a couple. But it was to the viewership numbers, 600,000, not great numbers. It didn't beat a couple of UFL games in terms of numbers, and they were in different slots. So, it's not always going to be apples to apples, but yeah, probably better than the Rotel infomercial that would have aired in that slot anyway. We all went in wanting to see separation from the quarterbacks, and I don't know if I necessarily saw anything to where I would be like, okay, this guy is, standing tall amongst the rest of the room. I think that we saw a lot of similarities. It's not the type of setup that's going to benefit somebody who's a runner like Will Howard, or even moving down the depth chart to like an Aaron Nolan. We did see a nice Aaron Nolan, run during the event. It was going to be a difficult battle for the wide receivers, regardless if you were a senior or a freshman going against that secondary. Emeka Egbuka made a fantastic, spear and snag on the visitor sideline to be able to pull the ball in at one point, which was, nice to see. The offensive line, I think that is going to be the big question. I walked out of the game, the scrimmage, not as concerned. Then I went back and I watched it, and I'm like, all right, maybe I am a little bit more concerned. And now we're starting to hear the potential of Ohio State looking at somebody in the portal potentially. I mean, I'm not necessarily dialed in on names, but I always felt that was going to be a big tell if Ohio State was going to go and look in the portal at offensive linemen. And, it appears that may be the case. So, I think that there's room to grow there. But overall, we all want to go into a spring game expecting that we're going to see something that's going to look like week 7 of the season, fine-tuned, smooth, up and down action. And it's the 15th scrimmage of spring practice. And you have to kind of remind yourselves of that, even though I think we all fall prey to it.
How much do we give some leeway to Julian Sayin in particular for making a couple throws that the one interception, you check off on interceptions. Okay, was that a bad decision? Was it a bad throw? Was it a late throw? Oh, well, it was all 3. And we've got, he shouldn't have thrown it there. He threw it behind the guy and he threw it late. And then the other one was not too pretty as well on the other end of the field. So these young quarterbacks, Sayin in particular, I'll pick on because he looked to be most affected by the wind. Right before that, he threw a ball into the turf, trying to throw the ball across the field as well. You're on mute, Steve.
My apology. I think that Sayin pushed his way into the discussion to try and start at some point this season. I don't think he's going to start the first game, but I think he did very well throughout the 15 practices, and it was evident when he was let's go back to the manner of thinking here. They had the first team go out there with Will Howard. Then they put the second team offensive line and offense out there with Lincoln Keenholz, and that was done so they could bring the first team back with Devin Brown for the third series. And then Julian Sayin finally appeared for the fourth series. And then they just kind of rotated from that point on. And whereas the 2 veterans, Brown and Howard, were done at halftime, Sayin, I think Keenholz maybe, and certainly Aaron Noland, he played, exclusively in the second half. It tells you kind of the pecking order. For Sayin, he's not the biggest guy in the world, and I think that's what everybody has noticed. He is 6'1", 203 pounds. When they did the picture of them taking the black stripe off of him, Will Howard and Devin Brown towered over him. So I kind of want to say, okay, Baker Mayfield, a smaller guy, but he still can get results. What I came away with this from is he needs to do whatever he needs to do before the preseason starts to get bigger and stronger and improve his arm strength just a little bit. A windy day really played havoc with him. And the interception, I think he was thrown from the left hash, trying to throw it late back and did not quite get it there. And I think Jalen McClain made the easy interception on that ball to return it on that. So, again, the coaches only know what they saw for 15 practices. If they think Julian Sayin's the best guy based on the 15 practices, then so be it, whatever. But I think what we saw in the spring game illustrates, again, the importance of experience. The 2 older guys did not throw a pick. The 3 younger guys combined for 4 interceptions. Now, granted, Aaron Noland threw one up for grabs on the last play of the game, just trying to make something happen. I mean, the clock had expired. So throwing an interception there is not that big a deal. And I think what we come back to again was something either Brady Quinn or Urban Meyer said on the broadcast, that as they watched the game live in the stadium, nobody is open. The secondary, even the backups with Calvin Simpson-Hunt and Jermaine Matthews and everybody else, they were blanketing the receivers. So I think the young receivers, your Carnell Tate, your Jeremiah Smith, Ennis when he's healthy, Bryson Rogers, all these guys need to get back in the lab, fine-tune route running, getting in and out of breaks, high pointing the football. Brian Hartline's going to have them work on the little things that it takes to make plays against a great secondary. And obviously, wonderful to illustrate that this is a great secondary finally after about 4 or 5 years in the wilderness. So that's kind of my overall on that.
Anything additional, Kevin, on the quarterback play?
I mean, I think it's a situation of where you go in and you go through 15 practices, and your first couple are just making sure left from left and right from right and everything else, and you have your scrimmages and you have your competition. But once you get into Ohio Stadium to go through a real full scrimmage, on Friday leading into the spring game, they did stuff in the stadium, but it was some positional work. There was some 7 on, some 11 on, but you turn the lights on and everything else. And I think, it gets people amped. And I think that the defense did a good job. I mean, right, the interceptions, some of them were just not great throws. I mean, as Steve had highlighted, they just weren't great throws, great decisions, whatever. But I'm focused more on the secondary, really blanketing guys. I mean, Jeremiah Smith was largely taken out of play. There was a play that Davison Igbinosin locked him up. There was another play where I believe it was Jermaine Matthews locked him up. They were not going to let a young buck come in there and beat them. And I think that everybody was probably just given a little extra in that game. And I think that when you sit there and you look at spring practice, where the strength of the team is at this moment in terms of experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it was always going to be tilted a little bit toward the defense. The good news is you have a ton of tape. And while the coaches can't work directly with the players on the field, there's all sorts of time to go over film and all of that stuff. And there will be a lot of good learning experiences. I'd be more concerned if Ohio State came out and was executing really well in the spring game, like across the board. And that would have been more of a case of, is it a low ceiling for this team? But I think that there's a high ceiling. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that can be gone through coaching and everything else that will carry all the way through spring, through fall practice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these guys will be good to go when the season opens against Akron.
Now, the team up north, are they aware of those rules about not being involved with the players during this period of time going into the summer?
They better be. They're on probation for 3 years, so they can't. They got to keep their nose clean for 3 years. So
they got to keep their nose clean. They have another pending investigation. I mean,
they're running out of nostrils.
Well, I made some comments on social yesterday and summarily tried to get slapped down by some Michigan fans. So I'm just going to chill today. I'm going to unless I'm egged on, and then there are no promises.
It's all good.
Go ahead.
I look at it that they're in for a rude awakening. I mean, it just feels like things are starting to spiral out of control up there with everything. Denard Robinson with a DUI now. That's 2 DUIs this offseason. Plus, the first NCAA shoe has dropped, and now we all await the second NCAA shoe to drop theoretically within the next month or two, you would hope, to get some clarity. I don't think they're going to be eligible for the Big Ten championship, and I don't think it would matter. I think they're going 7-5, 8-4 this year, and they're in for a rude awakening. I think it's they had their moment, and we all knew that this moment was going to come where they're going to pay for it. And it's been a mass exodus up there. Now Will Johnson wants out, and that'll just tell you that people just don't see it up there, for 2024. So for them to have an over/under of 9.5 wins or whatever it is just absurd to me.
Load up.
Yeah,
I've already put maybe a couple of units on that one on the under.
Yep, no doubt.
So a couple other notes from the broadcast, both pertaining to Urban Meyer. First of all, Ohio State fans have to respect that he still does not utter the M word through an entire broadcast of speaking of that team, and we'll test him again
Of
this
course.
week. I'm guessing he's going to go to Ann Arbor and be one of the analysts in the booth.
Hard to say. Maybe he won't. Maybe they'll keep him off that one because I mean, if you can't say the word Michigan, how do you do a Michigan game? I don't know.
Well, he talks about them every week. Just
Yeah.
It's the Wolverines. It's the team up north. That's what it is.
Yeah, but that'll piss off a lot of people. Granted, I if their numbers are similar and it's only 600K tuning in or whatever, you're diehards largely, and those that are curious. I mean, I was shocked last night when I was watching something on BTN to find out USC spring game is going to be on BTN already.
I thought it was going to be on Pac-12.
I thought so too.
Well, maybe it's being simulcast. It is on 3:00 Eastern Saturday on BTN because the bar I was at had college softball on BTN, and they promoted a couple of times.
Okay. I wonder if they put Charles Woodson in that spot in place of Urban Meyer. That would just make more sense, to have a Michigan guy doing the game because it's more of a grab ass telecast anyway of them sitting around yucking it up as opposed to a real X's and O's type thing, and grab ass is more kind of what Charles Woodson would be there for. So
I thought that made sense too. I think that Charles is a little more partisan toward his team, but the thing is that he is not annoying about it the way that Dez is over on the Four Letter Network. Charles, there's no doubt in anybody's mind who he's pulling for or whatever, but he bases some of his wild ass comments with at least a semblance of fact or whatever. Whereas Dez Dez is just going to Dez.
Dez going Dez.
Yeah, that's my experience with those two as well. That's well stated, and I think that's on point there. Yeah, again, Urban Meyer. Anyway, I was searching all over the place to follow up on the USC deal because we were going wild the other night. So the Pac-12 network is airing all of the former Pac-12 because it's obviously the spring semester of the current calendar year. And so we had a bit of a tirade the other night on the USC show concerning that not being picked up by the Big Ten network and probably contractually tied down to the Pac-12 network. But Kevin's telling us the Big Ten network. There we go with USC this Saturday. That will follow the Michigan game on Fox.
Yeah, Fox has a hand, I think, in both networks, don't they? So they could just dictate, it's going to be on both or whatever. So,
So
I don't remember what the makeup of Pac-12 was. I mean, Larry Scott had all sorts of weird ideas of how he wanted to handle distribution rights and everything else. I don't know what the ownership points are in the soon-to-be defunct Pac-12 network.
Yeah.
I have a buddy who's like a producer over there, but I haven't reached out to him to ask. I just don't want to be like, hey, so you're going to be out of a job here soon. That's just never the way you want to lead a conversation.
The final pitch of the Pac-12 baseball tournament has been made. It is a wrap. So there you go.
Yeah, I just found that strange. Not that they would not want to cling onto any valuable programming in the least bit that they have, but that they would be airing all the departed teams' spring games is a bit odd. But again, they're trying to salvage a buck or two as they call it quits. The other thing that Urban Meyer did during the game was he presented a list of tangible and intangible qualities of championship teams. I don't know if you guys caught
this. I saw that. I didn't take note of it, but I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about separating good from great. The only item on the list, on the tangible list, that Ohio State would be in question, in my opinion, was offensive line. But other than that, it all lines up for them. Now you go to the intangible list and you start talking about things that we could debate and argue and conjecture about all day in regards to, do they have the leadership? Do they have the toughness? Do they have the elite coaching staff? That would be the easiest to quantify. But again, I don't know if you guys caught that. I thought it was when we talk about the presentation of a spring game and whether it should be more game or more television show presenting the team, I like the presentation of the team, especially if I'm a little less familiar with the team. If I'm watching the Clemson spring game, I want to hear the breakdown of the positions, the players, the program. And I thought they did a decent job of doing that. And I could listen to Urban Meyer talk football for a couple hours, and that would be better time spent than knowing that it's 3rd and 6 at the 17-yard line.
Well, from about the 45-minute mark of the broadcast on, if you knew who any of the players were who were on the field, then you are an expert on Ohio State football, because late first half on, it was mostly freshmen, sophomores, and walk-ons. So, it really, what was taking place on the field was in a lot of ways immaterial. Great for those kids and their parents and their high school and so on and so forth. And some of them, the 2 freshman running backs, Sam Williams-Dixon, he was brought in kind of in the shadow of James Peoples, and Sam Williams-Dixon had a great day. He ran for 75 yards. And James Peoples, the highly touted running back from Texas, he came in, he ran for, I think, 10 times for 36 yards. He didn't quite get the same amount of traction that Sam Williams-Dixon got. But still, great to see those guys each get 10, 15 carries in their first time to play with the lights on there at the stadium. That's going to benefit them tremendously. Having said that, I'm already on record as saying, okay, you lost Dallin Hayden. You got to go replace Dallin Hayden in the portal with somebody who will accept the role as the 3rd string running back on one of the 2 or 3 best teams in college football, because in a 16-game season, Henderson's going to get chewed up and spit out. Judkins is going to get chewed up and spit out. And you're going to need, at some moment, you're going to need a veteran guy, number 3 guy, to come in there and make plays. And it's just fact of the matter. And to rely on a freshman in a high-leverage situation, I think, is going to be difficult. T.C. Caffey, the walk-on, number 26 or 28, he did a great job getting in there, catching passes and running the ball too. He's back from injury. He's 215 pounds. There's people on our message board that say they need to put that guy on scholarship and maybe not worry about going out and getting a running back. But I think there is some value in kicking the tires on a transfer portal running back. And certainly, to my way of thinking, you've got to add an offensive lineman who will at least compete with the guys you have for us, if not a frontline offensive lineman to take a starting role. And then if it's a tackle, you put Fryer at guard. If it's a guard, you put Fryer at tackle, and go chase championship trophies, because I'm not sure you're going to get there with the guys you have right now.
All right. Another spring game in the books. We'll see the Buckeyes next against the vaunted Zips of Akron. That will be the next look for the public, at least. You guys are some of the favored few that get to see them at practice from time to time, even if it is from 50 yards away.
Like 4 times a year.
Yeah, we don't get to see any during the fall.
Yeah.
None?
No. I mean,
warm-ups.
I was going to, yeah. I mean,
warm-ups. That's about it.
No, we get spring, but we don't get fall, if I remember right. I mean, because unless there's like a BTN day or something like that, the bus or something like that, they're done with us.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, not done recruiting for 2025. It's currently the number 1 ranked class, at least according to 247 Sports, with a couple more pickups from this week. It's a safety in Cody Haddad and a tight end in Nate Roberts, Kevin.
Yeah, I'll start with the tight end, Nate Roberts. I mean, that one is a big get for Ohio State, especially with a couple of other targets opting to go to Miami with Brock Schott and with Luka Gilbert. I think that Nate Roberts is kind of in the mold of what they're looking for, a skilled pass-catching tight end who, additionally can do a lot of your inline blocking and things along those lines. I mean, he's not, your 6'7", beast of a tight end, but he also is, able to get out there and have a little bit of receiver skills in him. So I think that one is a huge get. I mean, that one I was expecting to happen a little later this month. Obviously, Oklahoma State are not going to give up among others, but I like the timing of that one. Going in-state with Cody Haddad, who's been listed as an athlete by many services, but he's being recruited as a safety, a one-time Wisconsin commitment. You're seeing the secondary really fill out for Ohio State. I mean, it is a secondary forward type of class, and of course, it now creates all of the questions. What does this mean for Dorian Brew and Trey McNutt and Fahim Delane? And I think Ohio State's going to probably go 8 deep. I think that there's going to be that much of a need based on what is leaving after this year, what could be lost with the portal, and some things along those lines. Cody Haddad is somebody. Don't look at the 3 stars in the rankings and be like, well, 3-star heaven. He's better in my opinion. I mean, he comes out of a tremendous program in St. Ignatius. He's going to be one of those types of glue guys that I think are important. I don't do comps, and I haven't watched enough of Haddad's game to really have a comp there, but wouldn't it be nice if they sat there and had somebody, and I'm just gonna, how about, getting like a Rob Kelly? Wouldn't that be nice to have like a Rob Kelly out there? And I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I like Haddad, and I had no questions whatsoever once he decommitted from the Badgers that he was going to join the Buckeyes.
Number 34, Rob Kelly. Blast from the past. Steve, any thoughts on the recruiting overall or otherwise?
Yeah, Nate Roberts, I think he had visited Ohio State the week before. And I think he had told the coaches while he was on his visit that he planned to commit, and it was all timed up. So it would be coming on a big news day at the spring game. So that was a great get for them. Number 166 overall, number 11 tight end in the country, Nate Roberts, Washington, Oklahoma, 6'4", 235. So as Kevin says, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State will probably continue to bang on his door until such time that he signs a letter of intent with the Buckeyes, and maybe even after such time, given the nature of the transfer portal and everything with college football now. And then Cody did number 34 overall safety nationally, number 15 overall in Ohio, comes from a great program at Cleveland St. Ignatius. And again, I think he's a guy you get into your program, ticketed for safety right now, but get him into your program and see what happens and take it from there. I would say safety is his position. So that's great. So again, the basis of what Ohio State should do recruiting should be in the state of Ohio. And if they feel he's an Ohio guy that can help the bottom line, then I am all for it. So looks to me, and he was at the game on Saturday. And again, a big splash for the Buckeyes on their big spring game day. It's like you're at the hard sell for the timeshare, and you're in the room and all the round tables and everything, and they break some old man and his wife down to buy the timeshare in Florida, and the salesman stands up and says, "We've got one over here. We got one over here. We've got a winner right here." And they give him the bottle of champagne in front of everybody. And,
we've been at the same presentation, obviously, because I've seen this too.
Yeah. Celebrate the fact that they got somebody to take their timeshare. I'm sure that they did the same thing there in that big meeting room when Cody Haddad announced he was going to commit. I bet they made a big hoopla about it in front of all the other recruits to show that this is a big deal, that somebody is coming to Ohio State. So to me, can't have enough guys that want to be at Ohio State, and I think Cody fits that mold. And obviously, got to get great players, and we'll see how he fits in when he gets there.
So to put a second wrap up on not just the spring game, but all of spring football, and of course, the spring game's the biggest indicator. But you guys being privy to much more than that, if you put all of spring together, Steve, I'll start with you. Do you think anyone really helped themselves this spring?
Oh, yeah. I was asked in my chat either this week or the week before for my list of guys who probably helped themselves. And, I grabbed the roster and I was like, yeah, this guy and this guy. Kion Grays is a wide receiver who probably stepped up a little bit. Certainly Bryson Rogers, a wide receiver who was in the transfer portal very briefly. He'll be a sophomore this coming year. I think he helped himself. Jelani Thurman is going to rep at tight end, I think. Again, with all these young wide receivers like Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, and certainly when Mylan Graham arrives in the summer, they're going to have to really drill down on the finer points of wide receiver play because they're going to get exposed in practice every day if they don't, because that secondary is awesome. Sam Williams-Dixon, not sure what he did over the 15 days of spring ball, but man, his spring game was dynamite. I thought he ran with authority, and that's not something that I think a lot of people were thinking with him. They looked at him as more the playmaker type guy, open field, but I thought he did great. TC Caffey coming back from injury, I thought was really good. Going on down, I would have thought Luke Montgomery, but over the last week, it seems his hold on the right guard position has lessened, and he was tossed aside for a sack in the spring game. I forget which of the many sacks that was, but I didn't feel like Hinsman at guard was the answer. I didn't feel like Montgomery at guard was the answer. Tegratosh Bola gave up a sack coming off the edge one time. I forget who had that. I had it all written down, but don't have it in front of me. But, I don't know that they've got the definitive answer to that position just yet. So need to see some more there. G. Scott Jr. looks like he's the guy at tight end. Flipping over to defense. Aaron Scott Jr. played well in the spring game, for true freshman out of Springfield, really highly touted. I think 11 Warriors, our guys over there, said that Aaron Scott played the most snaps of anybody in the spring game. So that's kind of an interesting thing. True freshman, got to play probably the entire second half, obviously. This secondary, it looks like it's set with Hancock and Denzel Burke and Igbinosun, with Hancock being the nickel back, it appears, and then Ransom when he comes back from injury, and Caleb Downs, the Alabama transfer, locked in. Good spring for Mitchell Melton at defensive end. Arvell Reese took a few steps at linebacker, it seemed like. Matthews and Simpson Hunt, pretty good backups at corner. Going on down, Gabe Powers made some inroads, I thought, at linebacker at times. And then defensive line, there were a lot of young guys who really stepped up. Jason Moore had a sack and contributed on another sack in this game. He is a sophomore. Edric Houston had a sack in this game, true freshman. And one more guy I'm looking for, if I can find him. Hero Canoe, I thought, the light bulb has gone on for Hero Canoe in his third year. He's coming on. Will Smith Jr., he played pretty well in the Student Appreciation Day scrimmage. Didn't see much of him on spring game. He's an undersized defensive tackle, only 288 pounds, so maybe he'll try and pack on a few more pounds. But those are all guys, and I'm sure I'm missing some of the, next, not starters, but guys who could be starting by 2025 or perhaps midseason in 2024 if something, were to happen to the guy in front of him.
So, Kevin, I guess the question for you is who regressed in this? No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, I don't have a roster next to me right now.
Roster there. Now there's a thumbnail for everyone to clip off to listen to a footnote on any what you may term as an obscure or fringe player on the Ohio State roster. There you go. Good stuff right there. So anyone that stood out to you in regards to, again, not just the spring game, Kevin, but in the totality of spring.
Well, at risk of repeating guys that Steve mentioned, because he mentioned them all, I thought I saw some flashes from Edric Houston as a true freshman coming in and making some plays. I liked what I saw out of Mitchell Melton as the as spring progressed. I think that, there's so many, we're talking about guys that really kind of help themselves. And I think I really focus on the guys that I already knew had arrived in a lot of ways, because those are the ones that you're going to have to be most familiar with as you're going on. I mean, on the offensive side, I think Bryson Rogers really did a lot of good things to be mentioned right there in the mix. Could he be the number 5 receiver? I mean, he has obviously an advantage over Mylan Graham, who is not enrolled yet, but Mylan Graham, super talented. Not that Bryson Rogers isn't, but it's going to take some work to kind of hold Mylan Graham off. I really kind of had hoped to see more out of the tight end position during the practices. They always seem to be in the far corner, and I never really got an opportunity to see a lot of them. It was kind of an up and down spring for Will Kasmerick. I think that it's starting to come on for him at this point. Obviously, everybody's really excited about Jelani Thurman and what they're going to see there. Jelani had a touchdown grab on the Friday practice in the near corner of the end zone. That was pretty nice, where he kind of went out and was able to bring it in. There's not going to be a shortage of talent, but to echo Steve's point, offensive line still not there yet. Whether or not they're able to land somebody like Derek Graham, formerly of Troy, who committed to transfer to Texas A&M in January, and here in April is back in the portal. Can Ohio State, Ohio State already made a run at him once. Can Ohio State bring him in? We talk about the spring portal not necessarily being the stronger of the two portal periods for depth, but I think there are a couple of targets out there that Ohio State, if it is serious about wanting to call this year, we're pushing all of our chips in. It's time. I think that they need to sit there and say, okay, we may break a couple of eggs in this omelet as we go back to the portal once again, but we need to get somebody, and hopefully somebody that is able to secure a spot, unlike maybe Vic Cutler was able to, who once again, after transferring to Louisville, is back in the portal.
Yeah, Louisville, I don't know if they had issues with NIL promises, as some people are stating, or what it is, but they've had 3 players not play it down for them that have hit the transfer portal that I know of. One, of course, the All-MAC running back, Panay Boone. You mentioned offensive line. Okay, so there's an SMU All-American or All-Conference player out of the American Conference who's maybe ticketed to Washington. His last name, I believe, is Massey. And then you have Anuje, I believe is how you pronounce the Louisville player's name, that came from Houston, who's also a tackle. So those are the 2 names that come to mind for me, based on what little knowledge I have of the transfer portal that I'm trying to learn hour by hour. So did you have anybody else in mind, Kevin, when you talk about some offensive line help?
The portal is changing by the minute, by the hour. Really, Graham is the one that I've focused in on the most. There's an interior offensive lineman from USC who entered the portal, who it was like a top 30 national kid, I think, and obviously didn't strike there. So, I'm interested in seeing kind of what happens there, because where does Ohio State have to go? Does it go with a tackle to then potentially slide Fryer in? Does it go with a guard? But then at that point, are you saying that Fryer is your answer right there? Remember, with line play, we all want to sit there and it's really easy to put on a play and look at it top down and be like, well, this guy just blew his block. But sometimes you don't know what his line mate was supposed to do and everything else. So I don't know necessarily what the right answer is. Hell, take them both. Ohio State is sitting at 85 right now, according to many of the scholarship tracker, lists that I've seen out there. Ours, I haven't updated yet. So, and Ohio State's only seen 2 guys go to the portal at this point, with Cedric Hawkins recently going to the portal, and then obviously Dallin Hayden. So, and I think the expectation is about a half dozen more players may hit the portal. So there will be slots for Ohio State to take guys, whether it's a running back, whether it's a lineman, 2 linemen, what have you at that point. So I don't know. I mean, I'm generally not one who is at a loss for words, but at this point, I just don't know why the line has not been able to solidify to the point that it needs to.
Steve, is this team outside the offensive line, it seems to be about as buttoned up as an Ohio State team that we've seen, with as few questions on both sides of the ball than I can recall.
Yes, I agree 100%. And here's why. When I watched that game unfold on Saturday, the first team offense got the ball in the red zone a couple times, and I counted, I think, 5 pass breakups in the end zone. And I think 2 of those were Matthews, 2 of them were Hancock, 1 of them was Igbinosun. We know Burke can play, Calvin Simpson-Hunt can play, Lorenzo Styles is coming on, the safeties, you're 5-6 deep at safety, and your defensive line is coming on. They did all this. They had 6 sacks in 70 called pass plays, which is not a good ratio for the offense. That means you're giving up about 3.5 a game. That's not good. On 3.5 a game, whatever. That's not a good ratio. But they did all that. I don't think JT Tuimoloau, maybe only, I didn't see what 11 Warriors had for the snap counts on him, but he may have only played 1 series. And then I don't think Tyleik Williams played at all. And you add those 2 guys into the mix, they're both all Big Ten. So it's kind of like the front's going to set the tone. The back is going to, if a team does get in the red zone, they're going to have to settle for 3 because they're not going to complete a pass for a touchdown. Very rarely. I mean, it's going to happen. Somebody is going to score points against this defense. Inevitably, it's going to happen. But when you can hold the opponent to 10, 14, 17 points, maybe 20, 21 in one of these high leverage games, whatever it turns out to be, you have taken so much pressure off the quarterback, whoever it is, Howard, Brown, Sayin, whoever it turns out to be, and the rest of the offense. They don't have to be letter perfect. They just have to be good, borderline great. And I think there's enough playmakers on that offense that, to me, it was great to see Egbuka, who kind of finished the season on a down note, come back and, with some injury issues in the second half of the season, for him to come back and make 4 catches in this game, as meaningless as it was, just shows, hey, when the real bullets start flying, this guy's going to be getting 7, 8, 9 balls a game. And this is going to be, he's going to set the tone, I think, for this offense. So there is so much out there for this team that they could accomplish, again, if the offensive line comes together. And again, I don't want to harp on it. I don't want to kill anybody. I want it to be all positive and everything, but I think it's got to get rectified one way or the other. And I think between Chip Kelly, Fry, Day, Hartline, they're going to get to the heart of the matter. They're going to figure this thing out. And, if they have to go get somebody, crack some eggs, hey, that's what happens. So, this is big boy football. You've settled for second best for 3 years in a row. It's time for the bull crap to be over with and get back on top of college football. And top of the Big Ten, certainly beat Michigan, and it's time. I was asked, I did a show in Oregon today, like, is he on a hot seat? No, he's got a long-term contract, although he has a new athletic director, and he's not going anywhere. 11 wins, 3 years in a row, not what anybody really is looking for, but the great recruiting continues. He's surrounded by an all-star team of assistant coaches. And it's time. It's time to hit it back up in the top of college football, the real top of college football. And, let's see, let the chips fall where they may this fall.
Ryan Dawes, thank you so much for being here, man. We appreciate your contribution, sir. This is for all the great work, guys. Thank you, Ryan.
Notice he gave it to us when Tony's gone, so I'm just saying.
Yes. Ryan wasn't saying that last week, was he?
No. I've been texting Tony. I'm telling him what he's missing.
Big Tone.
All right.
I mean, I want to
Yep.
dovetail off of Steve's comments just about, this is the year to go for it all. I mean, because we've all said that if Ohio State has a great year, it's going to be a mass exodus before 25. It's still going to be a mass exodus largely just based on having a bunch of guys coming back to run it back for one more year. So the roster is kind of set where you need it. You have made those coaching changes that you need to. I mean, Ryan Day has finally yielded play calling responsibilities, and we knew it was going to take a special situation, and who better than his mentor in Chip Kelly to be that guy. I would hate to see Ohio State go the path of the Dodgers, who refused to get a good bullpen guy, only to watch seasons fall apart where they win 107 games along the way and then lose in the first round of the playoffs. I'd hate to see Ohio State make all of these masterful offseason moves, get Caleb Downs, get Julian Sayin, get Seth McLaughlin, everything else, get here to this point, and then get outbid for the one piece that they need to cross that finish line. And that spot is offensive line. Again, as I said, whether or not you think they need 1, 2, guard, tackle, whatever that may be, I would like to say that with 3 years of disappointments of not being in Indianapolis, not hoisting that Big Ten trophy, not getting the ring, that there is an awareness that you can't keep doing the same thing. And everything that we had seen from the end of that Cotton Bowl game up to the end of the spring game, nothing has led me to believe that they are going to be going into the season stupid. So I do expect them to make those moves necessary to fill out the rest of the roster to get it to where it needs to be to win the long run of the season. To the point of Steve being on the show in Oregon and Ryan Day being on the hot seat. I mean, you can look at it logically and say no, but I think if you look at it emotionally, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to say yes.
Yeah. No doubt. And I think a lot of that is the way Ohio State fans are kind of born and bred, that only one thing matters, and that's beating Michigan. And in this, and, it's still vitally important, and you can't take that for granted. You lost to them 3 years in a row, but the way things are trending, Michigan seems like I would say the least of their worries, but not as big of a worry as it has been the last several years. So again, don't take it for granted. Work it. As Urban Meyer used to say, you work that game 365 days a year. I mean, every day you got to do something to help you beat the team up north. So I want to see it.
Well, Brian Day was making points during the broadcast as he was being chided to talk about, how close is this team and what do they need to do. And of course, he was talking about one play and one drive. And then I saw a lot of Michigan fans and Michigan sites really harping on that, picking that to
that 20-point play.
The 20-point play. However, I stuck up for the head coach because I think, because I saw one article in particular that was dissecting the number of minutes and seconds, who was in the lead for this many minutes and seconds. Okay. In 2023, they get the ball down to the 35-yard line at the end of the game. Okay. That could be a one-play deal. They win 31-30. They're the number 1 seed, 12-0 in the playoff. The year before, obviously, forget what happened against Michigan. They beat Georgia. They win the national championship, regardless of what happened against Michigan. To pick apart what Ryan Day had to say when he's just talking about in general, we are right there. We just need to push it across the finish line. So cut the guy a little slack there. All right. I may just completely botch that handle, so I won't even attempt. I don't know what we're going for there, but we so much appreciate the contribution there. Is that $34 million number Barstool's posted real?
Well, we've seen the coaching numbers, so we can add up the numbers of what they're spending on coaching salaries, and so that is known. I think it's a little bit more cloudy trying to really know what the dollar figure is for what it costs to maintain and put together a roster, whether or not we're talking like NIL money for transfers or retention. We all heard the number that Ryan Day gave at one point, that it would be like $13 million to assemble the team. I don't know exactly the math that Barstool used to get to the number, but I don't think it's necessarily that far off. I don't have the ability to look under the hood, but one of the parts of the equation is a known. We have gotten through public record searches what the salaries are of the assistant coaches and everything else. So we know part of the equation, but I don't think anybody for certain knows to the dollar, or even rounding it to like the nearest 1,000, what the numbers are specifically with the players. But it sure makes for a fun story.
There you go, folks.
Yeah, we can't provide an itemized list of the, it's not like USA Today on opening day when they used to post all 25 guys on every team's roster, what they make. You can't do that anymore. You've never been able to do it, but you certainly can't do it for college football, because all these NIL funds going to these players are all confidential. I mean, the collectives aren't reporting it. The schools aren't reporting it. The players aren't reporting it. I'm going to be very honest with you. This is kind of crazy, but heard of a school where they went out. This is a basketball school. They went out and got a transfer to come in and slotted him in at a certain amount for NIL. And one of the guys who had already announced he was coming back went in and said that this guy's going to take my minutes, and he's also going to make more NIL than I am, and I may have to put myself in the portal now. And he'd already announced that he was coming back, but because the coach is trying to build a championship roster, he's now ruffled the feathers of one of his returning players. So, this is the world that we live in 2024, when somebody's word that they're coming back is no good, not good at all. And, everybody is living minute to minute on these things, on what their status is with the college program. I told somebody, told me that story, that I'm 56 years old, and I am so glad that I am within X number of years of retirement, and I'm on the outside trying to track all this stuff. Just imagine putting yourself in Ryan Day's shoes, and Jeremiah Smith announces he's coming to Ohio State, but doesn't send the letter in for 10 more hours because they don't have everything exactly quite down, I's dotted, T's crossed. And it's just like, Jesus criminy, what is this world that we're living in? But, this is, again, I say this every week, this is the world that they brought on themselves when they didn't solve the problems properly that they had within this model. So, whatever.
It's a player's market at that point. And the thing is, you're not signing people to contracts. I mean, if there were actual like legal contracts on like NIL, like, okay, I'm accepting that I'm going to make $600,000 a year for 3 years or whatever. I mean, it would be a lot harder to then come back and be like, oh, well, I just found out that little Timmy over there is making $650. I want to renegotiate or whatever. So the whole thing is so loosey-goosey, willy-nilly, that things are going to always change and evolve, and we're going to see names through, every year until things are, solidified a little bit more of, oh, well, I thought so-and-so was going back to such and such school. Well, no, there was a breakdown in financial talks, and that's just what's going to happen. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to hijack the show, but I'm sure everybody saw the leaked pitch deck of the 70 team super divisions and everything else. And that wanted to take scholarship numbers down to like 70 and, cap the rosters at 85 and have 70 scholarships, and you're still playing 17 games. That was one of the most insane things that I'd ever seen. There's more money than ever available to do these things. don't be a bunch of greedy SOBs and limit the number of available, spots for athletes to be able to be compensated and do this. I was just really put off when I read that pitch deck. I mean, plus two, it just goes back to it. Ohio State would be back playing in an old school Big Ten, but only worse. The couple of exciting trips that we have would no longer be divisional games, and we would add Cincinnati, which, don't get me wrong, I like going down to the Queen City, but I don't really need to. I don't need to go down there for football games.
Yeah, that 70 team thing is like, as pie in the sky as anything you've ever heard of, because, what we've created are halves with the 18 teams in the SEC and the 18 teams in the Big Ten, and then some kind of halves with the ACC and the Big 12, and then everybody else is a total and complete have-not. And the halves are not mixing in with the kind of halves. They're just not going to do that. They're not giving money back so that Wake Forest and Texas Tech can feel good about being major college football programs. They're not doing that. They're distancing themselves from Wake Forest and Texas Tech as quickly as they possibly can. So they're going to be paying players, whereas those schools at a certain level, whereas those schools will be paying players at a much 10%, 20% on the dollar type level. So, whatever the model ultimately turns out to be. But there's no 70 team Super League. There's no socialism in this thing. It's straight capitalism, straight money. And, we've identified the 36 halves and the 105 have-nots. So,
well, I mean, it's to the
it ain't going back.
Yeah, it's to the point that you either have to go one of a couple ways. You either have to go to where you have a salary cap and a salary basement, and you just have straight up communist sports right there. Or if you have it to where, okay, well, we're going to give you like a minimum spending threshold. You've got to spend at least X amount on football operations or whatever. With 70 teams, you're going to have 30 teams out there that are going to, to borrow a phrase from NASCAR, are going to start and park. They're going to participate, spend the minimum, and pocket the rest. And that is, I mean, we're not cutting away the chaff from the wheat. I mean, it's not realistic. And I'm sorry that if you've been a team that has been able to compete for a national championship for 100 plus years and have won 0 national championships and have gone to like 6 bowl games in program history or whatever, it sucks to suck. I mean, it is what it is. And I know that there'll be alumni of, sucks to suck you that don't like my answer. But if we're trying to sit there and create a more streamlined, financially tenable situation, if you can't compete, then you don't need to play.
Some of those halves have been deemed halves, though, just based on association. So we've got some halves in the SEC, and we have even more halves, in quotes, in the Big Ten that are the Illinois and Indianas. What have they done? What are they contributing that's any better than the Kansas States and Oklahoma States of the world?
They all have to answer questions, in my opinion. I think that the reality is everybody talks about this as blowing up conferences or whatever. You can take football away from the equation, and you can maintain the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12 and whatever, the American, go on and go on and go on. You only have to sit there and move football. Now, so much of conference membership is derived from your football affiliation, but let's think outside the box a little bit. And okay, it's great that the Big Ten has been around forever and a day. They're going to just be sorry, Northwestern. You had a great run in 23 under David Braun, and I think most of Big Ten land was cheering for you, unless you were playing against, they were playing against Northwestern at that point. But you're probably not set up to compete in whatever a real super league is going to be. Plus, you're also playing at your practice facility for a couple of years. Bring your own chairs, so you're immediately disqualified with that whole mess. But no, I mean, there are going to be teams that are. I mean, I think that there are going to be teams that are going to be disappointed that they're and angry that they're left out, and there'll probably be lawsuits, and that's probably going to be one of the things that's going to hold up, a move towards sanity. But it is what it is.
Kevin, what's going on this week there with the Big Me podcast and Buckeye Huddle?
Oh, hell if I know. I actually had been kind of putting together thoughts on the 70-team Super League. I've got a couple calls I've got to get on, but I may tape a show later this evening to release today, talking about my thoughts on the Super League. And then, of course, the transfer portal is going on. We're doing a lot of following of that and things of that nature, not only on the football side, but also on the men's basketball side, as men's basketball has added 2 via the portal. Apparently, if my count is right and everything's there, 2 more spots.
Yes, 2 more spots available.
2 more spots. So keep an eye on all of that. But we'll have a couple shows coming this week on the Big Me Kickoff. And of course, you can follow me at Kevin. God damn it. Kevin_noon.
It's on the screen, everyone.
I'm tired. Put that on the blooper reel.
Yeah, we'll get the production staff on that.
No,
Steve.
thank you.
Just a lot of what Kevin said. I've got a column going up where I'm going to kind of tie spring football up in a bow. And obviously, we're all over everything that's going on with recruiting and everything else that's happening kind of in college football right now. Going to try and track the transfer portal prospects. I'm sure they'll have some guys visiting here in the next several weeks as well. So we're going to do our best to stay on top of it, no doubt.
Folks, please subscribe to the channel right here at the Voice of College Football and like the video on your way out. We will see you most likely next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Important to subscribe and hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We will see you next week.